Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Triumph Strength Performance Podcast. On today's episode, Devin, Chris, and Andy will be talking about favorite client performances of 2023, lifting frequencies, and other interesting meet day occurrences. If you like this, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, and check out our content on Instagram at Triumph S&P. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
First topic. Favorite meet day performances of 2023.
I gotta think a little bit.
I feel like I'm kind of biased because Sophia won CNATs.
Oh
That's
yeah,
my
that's
favorite.
amazing.
That would have
That's
been
boring. That's boring though. She had no. Yeah, that's kind of mean. I guess I shouldn't say she had no competition.
No, I get it. That was, I'm so biased because that one was the most memorable. Yeah. So probably that one. I also like Abby's very recent performance at Coliseum because that was like a 30 dots PR between June and December. Those are probably my two favorite.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with Sarah, most improved TSP female athlete of the year. What was her dots difference? I forget. It was like 80 something.
Wasn't she sub 300?
She was sub three. Yeah, it was her first meet was in November or December of 2022.
That was October.
Maybe it was October. I don't know.
Was it Odyssey Barbell?
Yeah, it's one that I did. So maybe that was October.
Odyssey. Did you
That was
do
October.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
October. I forgot you competed at that one, honestly.
Huh?
I forgot that you competed at that one. I'm not used to
You
you
coached
competing.
him.
Yeah, what you say?
I said I'm not used to you competing.
That was the last time I competed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, at that meet, she competed at 67, squatted 214, bench 155, and deadlifted 231. And then at Coliseum a year later, 14 months later, she competed at 60, squatted 275, bench 176, and deadlifted 303. So I forget what the exact total PR was, but like the dots was like, yeah, like plus 80 on the dots, 80 something on the dots. Qualified for junior nationals, 9 for 9. That was definitely the best, like biggest jump in performance out of anyone that I coach.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I think mine is probably Matt Wong's CNS performance. Because we were going to that meet expecting for him to like not even make it through the whole thing, not make weight, like just not PR his total, just like go there for fun to just be on the stage and be like, "Ooh, look at me." I did a meet with him in November. I think it was November of 2022, and he was like my second client that I handled ever. And he came to me like 6 weeks out. We made a good bit of progress, but I didn't think he was gonna like put up that good of a performance. And we ended up like hitting a YOLO deadlift of like 250 on the platform, which was like I think like a 20-pound all-time PR at the time on the platform, which was 30 pounds over anything that he hit in prep, I think. So it was just like out of nowhere. But at that meet, he missed the QT by 2.5 kilos. So we had to compete again in February to re-qualify for, or just straight up qualify for CNATs.
Wait,
He
you're
really
talking
wanted
about
to go.
CNATs or C Cup?
I'm talking about CNATs of like this past year, but I'm just saying like leading up, I'm giving context leading up to the meet. He was injured, right? He was not kind of on track to necessarily PR his meet total. He hadn't deadlifted anything above like 500 pounds when his best pull in comp was 250. And he was like barely at the same strength that he was at previously on squat. His bench went up by a little bit, but you guys know Matt. He's not like a lifter who like his lifts don't look any crazy different from 90% upwards. Everything just looks insanely hard, but he always has room in the tank. And he ended up having to cut. He always does these like ridiculous cuts. He cut, I think, like 2 or 3 kilos, just water cut and everything like that. And he was in like a car in the parking lot trying to weigh in for the meet, and he weighed in 74.99 on the dot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh, yeah.
remember that.
And then he went 9 for 9 and PR'd his total. And it was so fun watching him kind of surprise himself with how well he did on the day. And he just had a great time, and I had a great time handling him. So that was definitely the most like satisfying one for me.
Another one that comes to mind actually now that I think about it, is Brendan Pham at regionals where he qualified for CNATs. We had like a Hail Mary meet the year prior to try to qualify for 2023 CNATs. And had the QT on his third pull, got like to his knees and failed it. And then, we didn't have time to like come back and qualify for 2024, competed at regionals in July, and was able to hit the heavier QT by his deadlift opener and just like smoked it and is still cruising. So like that was a super gratifying process. Like having like we were just like pushing wicked hard going into that meet, trying to qualify, missed it, but just came back way stronger.
Yeah. Another one that comes into mind now that I'm thinking about it is my client Ming, who I haven't even been working with him for that long, but he's like, so his most recent meet before we started was like a good bit back. So we had like a decent amount of time to, I guess take advantage of the gap there and what he was doing in training before he worked with me. But when we started, we had like very intentional things with technique that we wanted to chip away at, especially with squat and deadlift, and it worked exactly to plan. And just like the programming stuff we did off the bat it worked exactly to plan. Not only that, but my favorite part was like he's very collaborative and he knows what he's talking about. Like I like coaching the people who like can kind of who like they understand like general programming concepts and can kind of like give good objective feedback like, oh, I felt flat on this day. Oh, I'm feeling sore in this muscle group on this day, but it's because of this. I'll be fine by now, just like helpful stuff like that. And he gives really useful feedback like that. And he would say things like, oh, in my previous programming, I was doing this and it was working well. I was doing this and it wasn't working well. And it was just a very collaborative process. And every time we changed something or like added or subtracted something in the programming, it produced exactly the result that we wanted. Like there was this one time, I think I was telling Chris about this a while ago. What?
No.
Oh, I thought you said something.
I cleared my throat.
Your thing lit up in my head. But with his deadlift, I hope I don't like misspeak here, but before we worked together, his old coach had him doing both deadlift days in like 3 days. And usually if I see that, I'm not gonna have someone do that, like I'm not gonna have a 2-time week deadlifter deadlifting 2 times in 3 days. I'm gonna spread it out more. But it didn't work as well as we wanted. And he's not well leveraged for deadlift, so that was another big reason why I didn't want to do that. But we ran I think it was either 1 or 2 blocks of splitting the 2 days of deadlift up, and then it just didn't go super well. And he's like, oh yeah, in my past programming, I was doing this and it produced this result, and I would always feel good on my secondary day, even though my primary day was 2 days before it. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna do that, but instead of doing your secondary day after, we're gonna do your primary day after, and then it just went super well, and then we went into the meet, and I think his meet PR was like 402, and then he hit 440 on the platform, and it looked like he had 5 kilos in the tank. And squat, he hit some ridiculous PR. He missed his third, but it was just like a bad attempt selection call on his from who was handling him. And he also like chipped the rack on his second attempt, so that was a bit skewed. But like he blew up in that time, and every single thing we nitpicked and every single change we wanted to make produced exactly the result that we wanted. It was just like one of those like really satisfying beats, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You said he deadlifts twice in 3 days?
He does still, yeah. And it works really well.
What's the order in that?
So he deadlifts secondary day on Saturday, and it's literally a paused 3x1 at a percent. It goes up like 2.5 to 5 kilos every week. That's it. And then his primary day is just his primary day, which is like a top set and then some back downs. And that's on Monday. And it works really well. Like it's just he just needs to like deadlift close.
The secondary just like a primer session.
What?
The secondary just like a primer session, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that always makes things way easier when you're just like, oh, let's try this works exactly how you want it to, and then just carry on. You ever have any times where you're just like catastrophically wrong, like you try something and then just things go absolutely opposite of the way you want it to?
Probably, definitely. I just can't think of a specific example.
That's
First
I
one to
feel like
think,
that's a good segue into kind of like, or not to like segue, but like how long are you guys willing to try something out before you're like, okay, this is just like not it, and I need to kind of revert back to what's safe, essentially.
yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, I guess it's a boring answer, but it depends on who
Yeah.
it is and what it is. Um,
I'd say
but
like
go
a
ahead.
couple consistent blocks.
Yeah.
They have to be consistent though. That's the thing. Like if
Yeah, well,
someone
when you have someone that's all messy with their training and like moves days and it's
exactly,
just what can we really take from that anyway?
exactly.
Yeah. But I remember one time, I forget what the context was, but I was deloading Alan. Um, he's a 110 male lifter. And I just took away his top sets basically. Like I left the program as it would be on like a week one, and just took out like his heavy squat and deadlift basically. Um, and there was like the block preceding, or yeah, the block right after that was like the least productive block that we had ever had. He came in flat just immediately and could not move anything heavy at any point in that block. And we just learned that that's not how we deload him. But like, um, he's very sensitive to programming changes. Do you ever have people like that where like you change one thing and shit just kind of falls apart immediately?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Help with writing his taper and knowing what to avoid.
Yeah, what you just said with doing something small and then everything hits the fan. The number one thing that I've found messes with that is when you switch like exposure timing or like a certain day that someone's doing a certain lift. Like if someone has a primary bench on Saturday, that's pretty significant in my opinion. And I feel like if you move that to midweek or something, even if you just keep everything in order, it can really mess with things, especially with exposure timing, you know. Exposure timing is the big one, in my opinion.
That's I
That's
think one
something
of the most important things in running a week is how long do you have in between each session?
Yeah.
I used to do that way too much. When I first started coaching, I felt like I was way too comfortable kind of swapping things around and like not allowing time to have what's truly kind of like the best option really come into kind of flourish. And I'd be way too lenient with like, oh, let's just swap like a primary and secondary, or like let's move this here and move that there. And training was so inconsistent for so many of my clients because of that. And once I kind of like stapled down on that, I saw a lot more consistency across the board, which was really nice.
Yeah.
Dude, I have so many people doing the exact same thing for so long. Like I actually wrote this recap today, but Sophia specifically has done the exact same primary day on squat for like legit almost a year. Like I changed it for like 2 months just to see what would happen because we haven't changed it in a while. But like her primary squat day has been identical and her secondary squat day has been pretty much identical. I'll just like go 5s to 4s to 3s on pause squat. But like, yeah, like so many, like I have so many people. Like it's honestly kind of like that post we made, Chris, about primary and secondary days.
Mhm.
You can literally say like someone has a 1x3, 3x3 as their primary day. You can keep that in for a year and you'll see performance go up or down just by messing with the secondary day or adding a third day or taking out a day, something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you said Sophia has had the same relative micro for a while.
Like a very, very long time. Yeah.
Do you think that's more so to you like having her really figured out, or her just being a really good responder to training?
I think it's both because she responds well to train. Like she works her ass off. She's good with her variables. She's genetically gifted, all that, which makes it easier. But like I said, I did mess with things, and then shit hit the fan for like 2 months. Like she was taking, she squatted 385 pounds in what was it, November, and at CNAT she hit 352, and during CNAT prep she was taking 365, 360, 365 for like multiple singles for the past like 2 or 3 blocks going into the meet. And on meet day again, she took 352, but then she failed her third American record attempt of 365, I think it was. And then so she was capable of squatting 365 is what I'm saying. 2 blocks after CNAT, she was taking like 340 at 9 and like 315 at like a true 6, you know? Like that shouldn't have been happening. And right after the meet, we deviated from that typical microcycle and things changed and went worse. So I think it's a bit of both.
She squats 3 times, right?
She does now, as of July, late July, early August. And it was just like, yeah, like that kind of goes along with that. Like we only were able to milk those 2 days for so long. You know what I mean? Until she like she was hitting like the same numbers to end the block at like the same speed. And she's very well leveraged for squat. She's a lightweight female. I was like, okay, we can pick one way to go here. We can do less or we can do more. And if we do go more, there's multiple ways to go about that. Intensity, frequency, volume. We can pick one. She was doing 5 sets on her primer day, pushed hard, pretty much. Top set like starts at like 7.5, week 1, and then her secondary day, I didn't want to add more to that because she also deadlifts the day after. So yeah, I threw in I actually increased her from training 5 days a week to 6 days a week, and increased her squat frequency to 3 times. And then like I mentioned this verbatim in the recap I wrote for her today, but like arguably the most substantial training impact I've seen from like adding something was adding that third squat day for her. Like instantly the block after shit blew up.
So you said that you felt you had gotten all that you could out of the 2 days, and then you went to 3 days.
Yes, pretty much.
Is that how you view frequency?
That is a way I do frequency, yeah. I'd say pretty often, yeah.
Like just like fill up the 2 days or however many days. Once you feel like you can't fit any more work, that's when you add an additional day.
That's a criteria that I would like to meet, but I don't always meet it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, yeah, I'd say a good amount of the time I do that, yeah.
I found a lot of success kind of going along with, I know I'm assuming this is what Chris is about to kind of go on about, but like thinking about frequency more with those like exposure timings, and less so about kind of filling like those, I guess you could call them like buckets up for each of those days before being like, okay, let's split it into like a new bucket. And it's not like I feel like viewing it less as a kind of like all in, all out type deal makes it less kind of intimidating to add, frequency here and there, as opposed to like before. I feel like me personally, I used to view it as like, okay, this is like a last ditch. Like I'm not going to touch frequency unless it's like everything else has been like exhausted, and that's the only kind of thing that points to being the answer for getting whatever lift I'm like trying to, get moving, get like be moved essentially.
Yeah, I agree 100%. With the kind of exposure timing way of thinking about it. Because you can like I don't have an example that pops up into my head, but you can theoretically increase someone's frequency and reduce their workload, and then it's not a situation where you're adding the call it a tertiary squat session. You're not adding that third session and adding more work. You could have someone that's doing less total work across 3 days, but just literally spread out more and at a higher frequency and have them respond better to that than a higher workload on 2 days.
Do you guys feel like you do that with people more on bench?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say bench, obviously the recovery time is shorter. You can recover from bench quicker. You're usually going to do it more often. But also with the frequency that you're doing it, you're not usually going to be pushing to past like an RPE 7 on most sessions. I don't know. What do you think your average bench frequency is for just like across your roster?
4.
Me too.
3 to 4, I would say. I have a lot of like newer lifters, so I lean more on that 3. Most of I think all of my females actually are on 4. But I was about to say it makes more sense for bench because like the actual range of what's like, I don't want to say allowed, but like what makes sense to do is just so much bigger than like squat. You're between like 2 to 3, maybe 1, maybe 4, and deadlift you're between like 1 to 2, maybe 3. Whereas bench you could be like 2 to 6. So
yeah,
it's just like there's such a wide range of what's possible.
Who was that guy that I think Steve was coaching him that was benching like 12 times a week or something? Like he'd go twice a day.
Oh, Drew Thompson, I think.
So wild.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah, that's nuts. All right, I have a question now. So for example, say someone is squatting 2 days a week, and say they squat on Sunday and Thursday, um, but we'll say they have a pretty available training schedule. They train, this might be a little bit of an extreme example. They train 6 days a week, and they squat Sunday and Thursday. They come into that Thursday, so Thursday's their primary day. They come into that day feeling flat, but they come in really good feeling Sunday. Come into Sunday feeling really good. What would your instinct be? Would you add a third day, or would you just swap the second day out? Like, how often are you actually adding that frequency to get that desired result? Because I feel like, yes, it is an exposure timing thing, but are you going to solve that exposure timing thing by adding a frequency, or are you going to solve the exposure timing thing by relocating a session? Like, which one are you going to go to first?
Well, if they're coming in Sunday, we'd assume that if they're coming in strong on Sunday, we'd assume that Sunday is their primary session, or at least we'd make it their primary session if we know that's their strong. And if that Sunday is progressing, then no, I'm not going to add a third day. If the Sunday isn't progressing, then I don't know, I guess subjective feedback from the client as to what each day feels like and what we can do on each day to make the other one feel good. And if we don't know how to make both of them feel good or to make the Sunday progress, then tertiary session.
Let me add to it then. Say they are making progress, but you want their primary day to be towards the middle of the week, just for like say peaking purposes for meet day, taking that last heavy-ish exposure. They do best middle of the week. So say they come into Thursday feeling flat, but Sunday they feel better, and you want them to feel better on that midweek primary session. Would you say relocate the Thursday to Wednesday or something to get that closer in proximity to Sunday? Or would you say, for example, relocate things and add a third frequency and make it like Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something? Like, which one would you go to first?
If
Does that make sense?
frozen, you cut out a little bit at the end right there. Sorry.
Where did I stop?
I froze for a little bit.
I'll just repeat the question.
Yeah.
So say they are making progress, but you want their primary day to be midweek, just for like peaking purposes and to meet day, because that's what they respond well to for just this example. They come in flat, feeling flat on Thursday, but they come in feeling strong on Sunday. Would you, so like beside what you already said, would you, for example, move that Thursday to Wednesday, for example, to make it closer in proximity to Sunday? Or would you add the third day, make it like Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something? So Monday is like a secondary day and then Wednesday is still a primary day. Like, would you go that route, or would you just make the adjustment of like trying to keep the primary session midweek, but just move it a day closer to Sunday?
So my first thought would be not adding a tertiary session.
Okay.
But if I really wanted to, I don't know what exact situation I really feel like I needed to move a primary session that would be strong on a certain day midweek. But if that was the case, then yeah, I would just structure things so this microcycle is just moved essentially to have that Sunday be on Wednesday or wherever you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But also there are some other things that come into play. Like if you're trying to have your squat day be strong, you're gonna have overlap with your deadlift. So it's not like you can just move it in isolation and expect nothing else to change. So you need to see the whole program. But my first thought would be to not add a tertiary session.
Okay.
And just restructure things.
So what criteria would you need to meet to add the third day then?
Oh, well, there's a million I don't know, a million reasons to add. If they're not progressing, and if their subjective feedback leads you to think that they do better with a tertiary day, like they're not, I don't know, overly fatigued, they need shorter exposure times, things like that.
Yeah. How many people do you have squatting 3 days?
Let me look at my roster.
I got 2.
I think I have 2 or 3. I think I have 2 right now.
I have 2, and it's both of them. It's their first block squatting 3 times a week, and both of their squats are going phenomenally.
Yeah.
I wish I did it sooner.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that where I meant like it's a situation where I feel like before I was way too kind of hesitant on being like, okay, is that really like the right call?
Yeah.
And that leads you to like doubt yourself into not pulling the trigger on adding frequency when it's like I feel like it's way more intimidating on either I feel like it's less so on deadlift. It's more so that third squat day is the one that I'm like, do you really need that or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 4 people squatting 3 times a week.
4.
4. 3
The
female, 1 male.
the second person I have squatting, I may or may not have told you guys this before, but the second person I have squatting 3 days a week, we almost found on accident that it works because she squatted prior on Monday and Thursday, and then she got sick, or it was either she got sick. Actually, I think it was a work interruption late in the week. So we agreed to like move her Thursday up to Wednesday. So she was squatting just Monday and Wednesday that week. And then she came into that Wednesday session that week. It was like a heavy week too. Like she hit a RPE 9 deadlift that on Tuesday. So she had her secondary day squat Monday. She had an RP 9 deadlift single on Tuesday, and then came in and squatted again on Wednesday. And it didn't. And she had like one of the best squat days ever. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. You have your primary day on Thursday, and you've got this 2-day gap of Tuesday, Wednesday of no squatting in between. Let's mess with this. So what we did was I moved her primary day to Saturday, and then I turned that Thursday squat day into like a light tertiary day. And it took like a block for her to adapt. That block was a bit inconsistent. Like she got sick during that block and also again had to like move a session or two just from work and stuff. Her gym closes early, which is frustrating. But yeah, like we did like it took her a block to adapt it, but like it produced exactly the result we wanted. And frankly, if that week where she did have that disruption didn't happen, I would she may not even be squatting 3 days a week right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think we talked about that on another podcast, like the accidental discoveries in training.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
That's
have
a good
I've
one.
had a lot of those.
yeah, they happen all the time.
Yeah. I love
It's
that.
always
Some of
when
the biggest,
people like
biggest breakthroughs
get
happen by accident.
get sick or like have to, I don't know, move days for like vacation and shit like that, and you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
is
Makes
that
you feel
a
like an idiot a little bit because they're like
yeah?
they just like
It does.
like just by accident.
Yeah.
But
You're over here like crunching numbers, like staring at
Yeah.
your computer screen for 10 hours, and then they just like happen to find the sauce within like
just by
oh
accident, yeah.
by accident.
I think we went off program there.
Yes, we went on program. Um, yeah. I don't even know how much we talk about favorite meet day performances, but
That's fine.
what do you guys think has helped specifically with just in regards to 2023, kind of like from January to December that time? Like what do you guys think has helped growth in general in that perspective?
But I mean, I think biggest thing to help us grow is just being good coaches to our clients and having them say good things to other people about our service.
Yeah.
But beyond that, having a good social media presence obviously is good and kind of just showing that you have a good amount of knowledge. I think having the longer form meet recaps is a good way to do that. I think that's probably helped us a lot by just having these meet recaps that are a lot more in depth than some other coaches in the area or just in general.
We've gotten a lot of compliments on those too from like a wide variety of people. Like we got a DM, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, from someone that was just like, "Hey, I like these a lot." He was a pro
Oh, yeah,
powerlifter, and we were just like, "Cool, thank you."
Thanks, man. I've gotten inquiries from the meet recaps and or yeah, from like doing just the longer form meet recaps. I've had people be like, "Oh, it seems like you care a lot about individualizing things based on how you write the recaps." So yeah, I think that's been a huge help.
All the really good inquiries, I feel like, are that situation where it's like you post stuff and you'll have people be like, "Oh, like no one's gonna read all that. Like there's no way anyone cares that much." But then it's like the people that you actually get as your inquiries will like mention stuff. Like I've had people mention like stuff written on the testimonials on the website or
Yeah.
like meet recaps or like info posts, and it's like, okay, like the people who I'm actually trying to, reach are being like reached in that sense, and that feels super good.
Yeah, I think I think Steve mentioned that in a video one time where it's like I'm not gonna have a channel with 1 million subscribers or get 1 million views on my videos, but the people that watch my videos are likely to be people that I want to pay for a powerlifting coaching service and be good clients.
Yeah.
So I think that's way more important, is not putting out these, like, I don't know, 30-second reels that are like really attention grabbing and people share and get a million views, but offer nothing. It's probably the better approach to put something out that less people are going to actually pay attention to, but the people that do pay attention to it are more likely to actually interact with your business.
I agree. I think it requires a lot of patience, and I think like there's a certain like I guess demographic that you need to associate with if you want to take that route, you know? And that's where I feel like the networking kind of comes in. Like if you're like associating with the kind of people who aren't like-minded, who have like the same goal of attracting the same people, you're also probably not going to attract the same people. Like you can come off as really smart, but you also associate with people who, you know, aren't taking a similar approach and they're taking more of a attention grabby approach, like Chris phrased it, and you're probably going to be kind of wound up in that category. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was hoping
I
you were
feel
going to
like
drop a name at some point.
I feel like it's also it's interesting because it's like we haven't been in this space long enough to kind of
I don't know.
see how a lot of this stuff like plays out. So it's kind of, I'm very like interested to see kind of how things roll out for the next like 2 years or so, 3 years. Just like in general, I feel like it's going to be very, I don't want to say like telling, but like
In
it's
terms of
it's
what?
interesting like who's going to still be around or who's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
be like successful in that sense.
Yeah.
Because there's
What
obviously
kind of
like
content's being put out?
yeah, like there's stuff that we do to attract a certain like population that we enjoy working with, and then it's like we provide a certain service that meets the expectations, that exceeds the expectations, right, that we're proud of offering, versus kind of like I don't know, like we talked about this in our little in the council, right? Shout out the council.
Group chat.
Yeah, but like people who legitimately do it to make money, right? The goal is to make money versus people who are doing it because they legitimately enjoy coaching people.
Yeah, and obviously, like, you need to, if you want it to be your job, you need to have income, right?
Yeah.
You need to make money
Yeah.
from it. But if you're getting into powerlifting coaching as a way to make money, first of all, it's stupid. Like, why would that be the career path that you choose to make a ton of money in? But also, your clients are going to see that. Like, if you don't genuinely care, then your clients are going to see that, and they're not going to want to work with you, and then you're not going to make any.
I agree.
Go for a second, but
100%. I also think like client retention matters. Like if you're sure you can have 2 million followers on social media and get a bunch of inquiries from those people, but how long are those people really going to stay with you? You know what I mean? Like you're not like exactly like you just said, you're not in it for the right reason. You're in it because you want the social media following, you want the money. People are going to realize that. They'll stay with you for a couple months and realize what the spiel is and then drop you. And you're just going to be getting this cycle of clients that's eventually going to decrease. Whereas I think this was mentioned on a Powerlifting Now podcast by Matt Cronin, but he mentioned like you can legit have a 15 person roster and be super passionate about what you do and kick ass at what you do and maintain that 15-person roster and then get one inquiry per month over the next year. And then you got a much more full roster, kind of repeat that for a year or two. And I don't know, maybe lose in between 1 and 5 clients in the time, but like growth is going to be exponential as well. It's not just going to be 1 client per month, but it's like your client retention rate, if you genuinely care about what you do, is going to be greater. You know what I mean?
yeah, you just need to retain your client. You need to reach way less people in total to have a full roster if you're just good and your clients continue to want to work. If you're just constantly cycling through, then it's like you become a salesman, constantly having to just sell yourself on new people and then knowing that they're gonna, leave and you gotta get a new batch, which sounds exhausting and not enjoyable at all.
Yeah.
all the fun comes from like really learning people that way too. Like you don't get anything like you don't make those interesting discoveries or like actually get to work people to the point of like adding 80 points to their dots over the course of a year when it's just like, oh, you work with someone for 4 months and then see you later. It's like that's not it. That's not fun.
No, that's not fun. It's boring.
What do you guys think are some very specific things that we have done as a collective that have helped us kind of like achieve that status of like, being on the more long-term passionate side of things, if that makes sense, as opposed to attention grabby?
Well, I guess I don't really know how we're seen by other people and what we're perceived as if we are looked at as like whatever. But
That's a good point.
yeah, I don't know. I think I just tried to wait in terms of what? In terms of like putting out stuff on Instagram or
Yeah, like kind of like the long meet recaps and stuff like that.
like why does that look good?
Well, no, I mean like other things besides that. Like, because I feel like what you're saying in terms of other people viewing us a certain way, it's also like that's not our intention in the first place. What are some things like that you feel like we've done to make it known that that's not our intention, along with the long meet recap is just an example.
Well, whenever I make, well, I guess not every time I make like an info post, but usually when I make an info post, I try to make it about a specific client. One, because it's easier, it's to think of ideas. When you could just look at like your client's training and be like, oh, I just make a post about this. But also I think it shows that um, I don't know, you have specific interest in like the individual, rather than just kind of trying to parrot other things that you hear like top level coaches say.
Yep.
So I think, I don't know, it's showing that you know how to individualize things and cater to a person, is a good look.
Agreed. And I also think we've talked about this with other people before too, but like when you make content or, put information out there, I've found that it's like it's easiest to just like I don't want to say wing it, but like do stuff that or like write about stuff that you have experienced as opposed to like trying to pull something out of thin air and just make something like make an informative post instead of like
Yeah.
I find it's a lot easier when you have a trend within multiple clients or just like a certain case study or something you can just kind of write and never stop writing because it's
Yeah.
just so organic.
I feel like
When
I feel like that just all goes back to the like the caring thing. It's just like genuine care to provide the best service possible to your clientele. And I feel like paying attention to those things and like learning those things about them is like included in that. And then it's like then as you guys said, it's just like you have those ideas in mind because you're living that. Like
Yeah.
you're applying that. It's not just like, oh, I watched this video and it's like, oh, that's I like that idea a lot. I'm gonna make an info post about it. It's like I've been working on this with my clients. I've seen results from it. I want to, show other people.
Yeah, and when I first, I don't know, the first few info posts that I made when I had like, I don't know, like a 7-6 client roster, I had nothing to really go over that was unique or individual, right? I was just like trying to put out stuff that I thought made sense, but I really had no experience in applying it. But now it's a lot easier when you work with a lot more people and you can actually see the trends that you hear people talk about, um, and adding your own, I don't know, experience to it. I think makes for better content, and also just it's easier to actually make.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of meet recaps, what are some of your guys least favorite things that your roster or just people in general have done on meet day, like when handling like your local level athletes or just like local athletes to us, like what are some of those pet peeves of yours?
Yeah.
One of mine is just like wandering off
Oh my
without
I was
God.
about to say.
without telling you. Like you can go take a piss, but I like if we're in the middle of warm-ups, like I want to know that you're doing that. I want to
Yeah.
know like, I should be
And
in the
also
know.
sometimes no, you can't go take a piss.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to time things better. And like your 3 lifters out. No, you can't go take a piss. You should have planned better. You should have pissed her.
Yeah.
I hate that question. Um, but yeah, wandering off is I was handling a client, and he would literally take a warm up and then put his hat on and then disappear into the crowd, and I would have to go wander and find him after, every 5 minutes to have him take a second warm up. I had to like really, hold on to his shirt to make sure he doesn't wander off.
I had something similar happen. It was my first time handling this person. And we've since done 3 meets together and this hasn't happened anymore. But it happened so much this first meet. he would be like, "Oh, I got to go to the bathroom." I'd be like, "Okay, go." And like 10 minutes would go by, and I'd be like, "Okay, what are we doing?" Like it happened. I think he went to the bathroom to go pee after his squat opener, and he was in there up until like it came back. He was like 3 or 4 lifters out. And I was like, where is this dude? I was like spam texting him, and I run out to go find him, and he's like talking to his mom in the
Oh
crowd.
my God.
I'm like, are you like, we're at a powerlifting meet, bro. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Was it his first meet?
Yeah. Or no, it was his second meet.
Uh,
Just a little can't pay attention very well.
One of my favorite ones, and this is really only a local meet thing, is when this actually happened to me on Saturday, 3 days ago. Yeah. You get a couple dudes or a couple girls to, fill up a warm-up rack with you. And you plan out, okay, well, we've got 3 to 4 people on this rack.
I've
And then you
watched
get
this
a
happen.
random person and their coach just walk over to your rack, not say a thing, and just start taking the bar out of nowhere. And you just kind of look at them and you're like, what? Like, you feel bad almost, like, because 2 things are happening. You're either just being rude, or you don't know what you're doing and you probably need a coach to actually help you out. But then it's like, sorry, like, I just hate being that guy, but that's
Sometimes you have to be. Like when we were at not regionals, states. We were at states. And there was like it was like a 10 lifter flight, and there was 4 racks in the warm-up room. Something like that. 11
Yeah, it was
lifter
like
flight.
9 people, I think.
Sure, something like that. To where there was at max 3 people per rack. Half of them are gonna have 2 people, and we had 3 people on a rack, and then a guy comes and tries to force his way onto our rack. We're like, why do you want to be on a rack? There's an empty rack over there. There has to be an empty rack because of how many people are in this flight.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a pet peeve for sure. When people just warm up room etiquette in general, when people don't know what they're doing, specifically on the handler's end. If you're an athlete by yourself, then it's a little bit more understandable. If you don't have a handler, you don't have someone to kind of tell you what to do. But if you're a handler and you have an athlete at a meet, it's your job to know what you're doing.
I think another one for me is people who have no sense of, or when your athlete doesn't have a sense of like urgency, when it's like time for them to lift, and it's like, okay, I'm going to take, it's my turn to take my warm up. I'm going to take 5 minutes to put my wrist wraps on. I'm going to take 5 minutes to set my belt in the right spot, to chalk my hands, to like tie my shoes, and it's all this shit. And it's just like, okay, now you're no longer just like taking up too much of time for yourself. You're screwing over other people as well, because
and we literally need to retime your warm ups now because you just went like 2 lifters ahead of where you're supposed to
go. It's the worst.
Yeah. Speaking of being considerate about other people on meet day, when you guys write people's warm-ups out, or so say someone's been training on pound plates, are you going to mimic the pound plate jumps, like 102.5 with a silver, stuff like that, like 142 for 3 plates? Are you going to make jumps really inconvenient and mimic what they're doing in the warm-up room, or are you going to just kind of like consider what other people are taking? Like, for example, like someone who squats 400 plus pounds, you're going to have them start with blue, or you're having going to start with a red on squat, because even though they've been squatting with pound plates, you know what I mean? Like, what are you guys going to do?
Yeah, usually I'm not going to mimic it exactly. Like if someone trains on pound plates and they start with 135 and then go to 225, I'm not gonna make it exact, because one, probably doesn't make that big of a difference, and it makes things easier. 2, they're not gonna tell if they train on pound plates. They probably don't know that 225 is a red, a yellow, and a chip. If you give them a red and a yellow, they're probably fine. I'll just make it like close to what they're used to, without having to burden everyone else that's working in on the rack.
I feel like for most people too, there's going to be a threshold of kind of like quite literally like a percent of their 1 rep max, that like anything below that is, I don't want to say it's all going to be the same, but it's all going to be the same. Like what if you're squatting 500 pounds, like 135 and 155 is the exact same thing.
Doesn't make a difference. Yeah. Agreed. What do you do, Jeff?
I do the same thing. Like I'm not necessarily going to assume who I'm warming up with on meet day, but like I coach a heavy guy who trains on pound plates and he squats 550. I'm not gonna have him go one plate, two plate. I'm just, like I actually handled him fairly recently a couple months ago, and I just did the warm ups out, and I was like, right, we're gonna do what's convenient with kilo plates, assuming we're warming up on kilo plates, and also warming up with other people who are taking convenient jumps. So, like one plate, two plate, I just did one red, two red. I said, deal with it. It's easy. It's gonna make warm ups go smoother. Plus, it's like you don't really know, you can't really assume for the best on meet. You gotta assume for the worst sometimes. Like for all you know, you're gonna be warming up with four other people, and it's gonna be a rush flight where the meet's going slow, or you're warming up some douchebag who is taking super long or something. You know what I mean? You gotta assume like there's gonna be hiccups on meet day, and you kind of have to account for that to make your clients' warm ups go quicker and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the meet that we were all just at Odyssey last Saturday, it was three flights. It was spread out. I'm sure it was, organized how they, did the best they could organize it. But like, the flights were pretty weird in terms of size. There was like an 11 lifter flight or like a 9 lifter flight, and then a 6 lifter flight, and then an 11 lifter flight. And that definitely screwed with how you got a warm up, like time warm ups and stuff, having a flight that small.
Yeah.
The first session also took ages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Funny meet day experiences. I want to talk about that
Man,
one.
yeah, I was gonna say you have a good one there. I don't know that I have any.
I have a couple. Like I mentioned before, I had a lifter who he went out for like we didn't have the screen of lifting cast. It was like behind the on deck area, so you couldn't see when things were getting changed. And it was like he got swapped in the flight as it came back to the top where he was originally like opening the flight, and he got bumped to second after it came back to the top. No one told us. The guy at the like the official at the on deck area who's like bars loaded, let him go out. He took the attempt. It was the same weight, but it was 3 kind of ticks on the rack height higher than what he was used to, and he could barely get it out of the fucking rack. And then he was like, ugh, and he got it out, and then he failed it. But he was opening the next flight, so it was like there's no point in us kind of like fighting to get an extra attempt, because he would have just like taken that at the end of that second flight and then had to go again the next attempt after. So there's no point.
He hit on his third, right?
Yeah, we retook it, but like that was 5 kilos under his planned third.
Yeah,
So we missed
I've
out
only
on
had
5 keys.
yeah, I've only had one situation similar to that where they like sent out the wrong lifter. It was Surge at CNATS, and it was the opposite. So she was opening the flight on deadlifts, but she was second. It reordered, and then another girl went out when it was supposed to be Surge, and she took up like 40 seconds. And then they didn't reset the clock. Surge went out and ended up pulling it. But she locked out, like she got the down command after the time had ran out. And I think 2 of the judges were just like, whatever. They just gave her white lights, and then the center judge gave her a red, so we didn't have to contest it. But I don't know what you do in that situation. Like if she gets 2 reds for that, I'm sure I'm allowed to contest it, but I don't know what the because she just ran out of time, right?
Yeah.
But
and then my other one is the knee sleeve story, the Mia knee sleeve story from that same meet. That meet was a day. She was taking her warm up. I talked about this in her meet recap, but she was taking her warm ups without her sleeves. Like we took, I think, bar and then blue, just no knee sleeves. And I was like, okay, put your knee sleeves on. She put her knee sleeves on, fine. Took a red, and then tried to readjust them, and it just could not get them back on. And it was a whole ordeal. And I haven't been that kind of like stressed out and just adrenaline pumping, go in a while.
Yeah, the attempt selection is wild. Having it.
Yeah, she's a 52 kilo lifter. She was originally opening with 90 kilos, and we were going to jump, I believe it was going to be 90 to 97 to 102 was her planned third, 102 to 105, depending on how it went. And it honestly looked like she could have squatted like 102 to 105 on the day. But I bumped it down to 80 because we had to skip her last 2 warm-ups because she couldn't get her knee sleeves on and she was just outside freaking out. She goes out, takes 80, smokes it. No knee sleeves too. We put them back on. I put in an 87 because I didn't know at the time if we were going to be able to get the knee sleeves back on. So I was like, I don't want her to bomb out. So I'm not going to like put in, 90 and take a 10-kilo jump if like she's not going to be able to have her knee sleeves on. Like she never trains not without the knee sleeves. So it's like, it was completely just like, we have no clue what's going to happen. But then she got them on and went out, smoked 87. And I was like, this entire time I was lying to her about kind of what was on the bar. Because she had never taken jumps that big. And am I frozen?
No, you're good now. I froze for a sec though.
Did I freeze?
You were frozen, yeah.
Okay.
You did freeze.
But you were. I think both of us are freezing.
Nice. That's probably that makes sense.
Yeah, but I forget what I told her. I think I told her opener was 198, like 90 kilos, when in reality it was 176. And I told her that her second was like 209 or 214 when it was what's 87, 192.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we jumped to 220, 100 kilos, because I was like, you think you can squat 220? And she was like, yeah, I really want to do it. Like the entire meet prep, she was like so stressed about not PRing her squat. So like I really wanted her to hit that kind of like milestone of 100 kilos for like the mental kind of confidence for the rest of the meet. Because the entire prep was like littered with just like sickness and then other things going on that just like we didn't have a ton of momentum going into the meet mentally, which I feel like is important. But I loaded it. It was a 12.5-kilo jump for a 52 kg female, which is probably the biggest jump that I think I've made. And it's the biggest jump that she's ever made in training. And she smoked it. And she went 3 for 3, and then she went 9 for 9 on the day and hit like I think it was like a 27-kilo meet PR total.
Yeah, I didn't fully understand the situation when I was there, and I don't know that Devin did either. And I remember we saw the attempt selection. We were both looking at each other like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Classic
Dude,
7.5
I
kilo
would have
jump to
been
12.5.
devastated if she missed that third.
I know. Yeah,
I would have
tough.
too. That would have been 12 kilos off her total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was so relieved when she hit that.
Yeah, it's the word, like getting greedy on attempt selection and just loading 2.5 too much and then missing it, being stuck in second is the worst thing.
Yeah.
You're just like an idiot.
I did that. I think my second time, or this was my first time handling a female client on bench press. I took a 2.5-kilo jump into a 5-kilo jump, and since that day, I've never taken a like that bigger jump on the third, especially for someone who's like benching under 70 kilos.
Yeah,
like a 5-kilo jump's just way too much.
I think the worst call I've made at a meet was it was Sarah's third bench at Odyssey. I don't know, earlier this year. The attempts weren't ridiculous. We opened at 70 kilos, then 75 kilos, and then her third attempt was 80 kilos. And based on how her second moved, it looked like 80 kilos, would have been there. It wasn't, just, maybe like she had like a kilo or half kilo less. But based on what she had hit in training, that call made absolutely no sense. Her best bench was, I think, like 165, and we loaded 176 on the platform, just because we knew like the plates that she was training on, we didn't know how much they weighed, but we just knew that they were heavy. Whenever she gets on kilo plates, she's just way, like noticeably way stronger. So we just like took that in mind and just like, okay, we're gonna have to kind of go in blind. The planned third was 77.5, and second attempt looked like an empty bar, so it was like, well, let's just see if it's there, and it wasn't. And I was like, that was stupid. Won't do that again.
Do you think that's the worst call you ever made in a meet?
No, it wasn't the worst call I made at a meet. It was just like on paper, like based on like her demographic. She's a 60-kilo female lifter, loading up in a whatever. What's 176? Yeah, 5-kilo all-time PR on bench. Doesn't really make any sense. Looking at the attempt, it wasn't stupid. She just barely missed it, but when she missed it, it was like, yeah, why did I? What do you think is the worst call you've ever made at a meet?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know.
I don't often make very like, I don't know, unrealistic calls.
I never make mistakes.
No.
Oh, baby.
How often do you miss a lift and then go up?
I don't think I've ever done that.
Never?
Oh, I lied. I did that once. It was I don't know, over a year ago. Client missed. Whoops. Client missed opening squat on depth. But all right. It was like a shit show of a final week of training where this person was like doing army stuff and going on rucks
Oh
the
yeah,
week of their meet, and we had no fucking clue how the meet was gonna go. Like he squatted like I forget what he squatted. I think it was like 420 or something during prep. But we opened at 363 and he just got lazy with depth on the opener for whatever reason. But it was so easy. So I jumped 5 keys. I think that's the only time I've jumped on a miss lift.
I might have jumped for my client Matt's opener for his first meet because I remember he this is so funny.
that was so funny.
He like
Oh yeah, I remember.
I forget what was on the bar. I think it was like 170 weight that he's like he squatted in training a little over 400. I think it was less than 170. But it was weight that he could have repped, right? And he walks out. He's like super shaky at the time. He's just like elbows cocked back, like super, I don't know, classic guy who has never done a powerlifting meet squat. And he goes down, and as he hits the hole, he just like falls straight forward, and he just like it looked like he tried to like jump at the like head ref as
That's
on his
so
way
funny.
up.
It was
He just-
170.
It was 170.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did I go up after that? I don't remember.
Yeah, you went up
No,
7.5,
no.
right?
No, he didn't.
Oh,
Oh,
I
I
thought
took
170,
it.
170, and then 177.5 for third.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what it was. He was so like nervous after that.
Yeah.
That was,
Only time I can think of that that was so funny, but only time I can think of that I went up after a miss was Matt States in November, Surge's opening squat. She missed on depth. And we needed to we're going for the CNATS non-team QT. So she needed this, a certain number, and we just needed to go up. So I went up, and she ended up going 2 for 3, hit her second or third. But yeah, that's the only time I can remember going up after a second. Her first, I didn't even contest her first. It was so high.
Yeah. Get fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've
was it 2-1?
No, it was. I think it was.
It was 2-1. I remember.
It actually was. Yes. Andrew Graves was the head ref, I think, and he gave her a white light.
Thanks,
Thank
Andrew.
From the front.
What a homie.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah. And then second attempt was 3 whites, and then third attempt was 2-1 good lifts. Eric Point gave her a red from each side. She was unhappy about that.
I remember. I heard all about it.
Yeah, I don't think I
That
have
was-
any like I really don't have any weird meet day experiences. There's one time I had to take a token lift for someone because they were just for whatever reason back just flared up so much by the time we got to deadlift, and we just took like token opener and then scratch second and third. But besides that, I don't think about anything weird.
Yeah. I don't know. What's the biggest jump you've ever taken in the meet? These are just random questions, huh?
I don't know. 17.5.
I definitely took some like 20 plus with Owen at 2023 CNATs.
Hey, you took
we
some
initially
jumps, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean initially his opener on everything we just put in 125. Because he came in with a a healing hamstring tear. So we knew we weren't gonna like put up anything crazy. We were just kind of going for to have fun. And we were basically just like, all right, well, we'll see how warm-ups are feeling and then change our openers. I don't know. Let me go to his open powerlifting and see what I put up. I think we opened at like 190 on the squat.
I'm trying to
So
think
that's-
what mine was.
I don't think I've gone more than 17 and a half.
Yeah, we went
Yeah, I don't think I
185.
have either.
So 20 kilos to his second, and then 15 to his third. Went 185, 205, 220. And then on deadlift, we went 22 and a half to his second attempt, and then 10 to his third. 192, 12 to 22.
I think relative to like how much weight is being lifted, it's definitely my client Mia's squat.
Yeah.
Like a 12 and a half
Sure.
kilo jump for someone squatting 100 kilos.
Yeah. Didn't you have someone like literally over the weekend who was benched like 105 and opened at like 90 or something?
Yeah.
That's pretty fucked.
I don't remember what he opened at exactly, but like, because I remember you asked me in the warm up room, you were like, why are you opening so light? Or like, why are you taking such big jumps? And it was just like in training, I was only working with this kid for, I shouldn't call him a kid, this dude for, I think like 4 blocks. He was just like, he came to me and he was like, yeah, I want to compete eventually. And he was like gym bro background, not like a power lifter in any sense. And that was just like the jumps that he would do on a typical kind of like day warming up for that kind of squat or that kind of bench. And it was kind of like he was the type of person that, in my mind, if I took a more traditional approach with like those smaller jumps, it would almost like trick himself into thinking that he was like tired for those attempts. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, I like missed that because I took like a warm up right beforehand. It's like the classic like person who back when you were like a gym bro lifting like commercial gyms, you'd like hit a PR and then go up 5 pounds and then fail it and be like, oh, if I didn't hit that PR beforehand, I like would have had it. So it's like you're kind of just tricking yourself thinking that you like gassed yourself out for the lift when in reality you were probably just too weak for it.
Shit here at CrossFit Gyms is crazy.
Yeah. But it was kind of like that sort of deal where I was like, I almost want to like trust that it'll be there and take these bigger jumps that he would normally be taking as like warm-ups for that lift on like a primary day, as opposed to like the traditional kind of, I don't know, we're going to jump like, I feel like in for his squat, for example, something that would have made or would have been a little bit more traditional would have been like a 10 kilo jump to a 7.5. His final squat was 165. I think we opened, I want to say like 140 something. I don't have the exact numbers, but both the jumps on his squat and his bench were pretty big, like relative to his weight class. He was
You
a
opened at like
67.
140, didn't you?
Hmm?
You opened
On
at like
squat?
140, right?
Yeah, it might have been. I think we went 140, 152, and then 165. So 12 and a half, 12 and a half, 25
Yeah.
kilos.
Huge jumps, yeah.
And then bench was the bench 90 kilos to 97.
I don't know.
To,
It's something similar to that.
How did he do?
That
How
one-
was the meet?
8 for 9, right?
he went 8 for 9.
Yeah.
Both the squat and the bench were all-time PRs that he got stapled by in training.
That's crazy.
There you
So
go.
yeah,
Tabor Brown.
the most he benched in training was 102, and then he pressed 105 with what seemed like 2.5 in the tank, 5 kilos in the tank. And that squat, he squatted 165, and in training he squatted 360 that last week and just absolutely got folded by it twice.
I now remember who you're talking about. I had no idea who we're talking about.
Yeah.
The first. Yeah.
And then unfortunate deadlift slippage that cost us the potential collegiate nationals QT, which would have been cool for his first meet. Like not at all expecting that going in, coming out with a CNATS QT would have been nice, but unfortunate.
What, a grip on his second, then got on his third?
Yeah, we retook it because I was like, I don't want to risk like a 7 for 9 on your first meet just because we were like overreaching for a QT that we weren't even planning on like reaching for coming into the meet. So
yeah,
that would have just been, I feel like, an ego moment on my end, being like, oh, like, because I don't even think that he cared that much about qualifying. So in that situation, it's like, oh, you want this to qualify, and it's like me convincing him and almost gaslighting him into thinking that it's the right decision, when in reality it's like take that attempt, secure that successful attempt percentage, as opposed to shooting for something that you don't even want.
Yeah. All right. Thank you to everyone for taking the time to listen to the podcast. If you enjoyed, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and give us a rating on Spotify. Appreciate it. See you later.